A mochi moment from Tara, who writes, "For years, all my doctor said was eat less and move more, which never worked. But you know what does? The simple eating tips from my nutritionist at Mochi. And after losing over 30 pounds, I can say you're not just another GLP-1 source. You're a life source." Thanks, Tara. I'm Myra Ahmed, founder of Mochi Health. To find your Mochi moment, visit joinmochi.com.
Tara is a Mochi member compensated for her story.
This is Jacob Goldstein from What's Your Problem? When you buy business software from lots of vendors, the costs add up and it gets complicated and confusing. Odoo solves this. It's a single company that sells a suite of enterprise apps that handles everything from accounting to inventory to sales. Odoo is all connected on a single platform in a simple and affordable way. You can save money without missing out on the features you need. Check out Odoo at odoo.com. That's odoo.com.
You're listening to DNA ID, brought to you by AbJack Entertainment. Be sure to check out some of the other great true crime podcasts from this network, including The Murder in My Family, Missing Persons, Scene of the Crime, Zodiac Speaking,
Beyond Bizarre True Crime, Campus Killings,
and
Killer Communications.
All of these podcasts are available for you to binge on right now, wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe where you're listening to this podcast so you don't miss an episode.
It was 1970. On October 16th at 10:16 p.m., William Conyers called the Ann Arundel County, Maryland Police Department. He reported to Officer T. Brighton that his 16-year-old daughter Pamela had not returned to the family's Glen Burnie home from running a quick errand at the Harundale Mall that Friday night. She had left the house around 8:20 p.m. to go to the mall and hadn't come home. I know what you're thinking. Wait, Pam's been missing less than 2 hours. She was a 16-year-old girl. She's got to be at a friend's house or out on a joyride with a boy. No, said Bill Conyers. Pam was supposed to be home by 9 p.m. latest, so she could babysit her 2 young brothers while her parents went to their weekly Friday night bowling league. It was out of the question that she would ignore that plan. Bill said when Pam failed to come home, he drove over to the mall, which was closing down for the night. There was no sign of Pam's car there, and she hadn't shown up at home, so they called the police. Officer Brighton got in his patrol car and took a drive over to the mall. Bill was right. There was no sign of the vehicle Bill had said Pam was driving that night. The next day, Saturday, the Ann Arundel PD sent Detective Alan Carter to the Conyers home. Bill and Karen Conyers told the detective that their daughter Pam was a wonderful young woman, reliable, responsible, smart, driven, cheery, and a little bit of a homebody. She had never stayed out past curfew, much less all night. The Conyerses were, as you can imagine, frantic with worry. They laid out the timeline for Detective Carter. On Friday evening, Pam had gone to the bonfire at Glen Burnie High School that was held in advance of the homecoming dance the following day, Saturday. She'd gotten home around 8:15 p.m. Pam was in a great mood and talked excitedly about the homecoming dance that was upcoming. Mrs. Conyers and Pam realized that she needed to go pick up some shoe dye for the shoes that she planned to wear with the homecoming dress her mom had made her. Pam needed to be back by 9 p.m. to babysit for her parents, but the mall was practically next door, so Pam decided she would run to the mall now and grab the shoe dye. It would only take a few minutes. Pam took her wallet with $5 in it, she never carried a purse, got into her dad's car, and drove off to the mall just 1 mile away. Her mom knew the car was very low on gas, with only about an eighth of a tank, but the mall was so close and Pam was coming right back. Until she wasn't. When Pam didn't come home, her parents started to worry. Bill drove to the mall, no Pam. He called the police and filed a missing persons report with Officer Brighton, and Karen started calling all Pam's friends and the neighbors. Several neighbors rallied to drive around and look for the familiar car. They drove around all night. Police issued a bolo for the family's four-door gold 1966 Dodge Monaco license plate GK1216. While at the Conyers home on Saturday, Detective Carter interviewed a few of the neighbors who were keeping vigil with the Conyerses. I imagine keeping the coffee flowing, feeding the kids, and helping answer the phone. Every one of the neighbors said the same thing. Pam is a good girl. She's responsible, respectful. She obeys her parents, and she's what every mother wanted in a daughter. That was high praise indeed. Police suspicions about secret boyfriends or running away evaporated, especially because all of Pam's things and her cash savings were found in her room. Pam did not at all fit the mold of a runaway teenager. Having satisfied himself that Pam was indeed missing and the situation was indeed quite dire, Detective Carter went to the mall armed with a photo of Pam. He knew she had gone on a quest for shoe dye. Bill had told him that in his own trip to the mall that morning to try to find Pam, he had learned that Pam had struck out at the Tom McCann shoe store, but had purchased the shoe dye at a shoe repair shop called Stellis Shoes. The female clerk remembered a girl meeting Pam's description coming in the night before. She had been alone. When the detective went into the mall, the shop was closed, so he asked various loitering teens if they had seen Pam. Some of them recognized her photo, but they hadn't seen her, and neither had the mall security guards. A detective Shiflett was assigned to Pam's case. He took on the task of contacting the teens on the list of Pam's friends compiled by Karen Conyers. None of them had any idea where Pam could be. Most of them said they'd seen her on Friday night at the bonfire, but she left in her Volkswagen to go home. The boy who was to be Pam's date to the homecoming dance on Saturday was contacted by Detective Shiflett, who asked the youth, Kim R., where Pam was. Kim said he hadn't seen her since Wednesday. Pam did not turn up on Saturday. Detective Carter and a Detective Hannon spent most of Sunday driving around Glen Burnie looking for Pam's missing car. Detectives Terzic and Lohman checked all apartment building parking lots in the small city. They also took up a Corporal Wagner of the Maryland State Police on his offer to fly the state police chopper over the wooded areas around the Harundale Mall to see what they could see from the air. By 6:30 p.m., Wagner reported that the aerial team had checked that entire segment of the county, including the power line area on Marley Neck Road to Mountain Road, and saw nothing. But the next day, they found the car. The Conyers' gold Dodge four-door sedan had been well hidden. It was parked in a densely wooded area of Millersville, Maryland that was part of an ongoing and massive construction project. The car was parked among the trees on the 800-foot-wide median between the east and westbound lanes of Maryland Route 177 Extended, which was under construction to become new Maryland Route 100 at Mountain Road. This location is now about 200 yards west of the Waterford Road Route 648 overpass. The area surrounding the car consisted of woods, fields, and 5 abandoned houses because the entire piece of land had been purchased by the state 2 years earlier for the road construction project. The brand new road was not yet open to the public. A male resident of the area walking through the woods within the construction project's boundaries found the car parked among the trees, weeds, and brush. Responding Ann Arundel County police officers descended on the scene, finding the car empty and unlocked. Officers scouted the immediate area for any signs of Pam, but by now it was well past 6 p.m. and it was getting dark. The difficult decision was made to suspend the search on account of darkness and resume the following morning. So on Tuesday, October 20th, around 8:30 a.m., about 65 officers from the Ann Arundel County Police Department and the Maryland State Police fanned out from the recovered vehicle and extended eastward over the surrounding fields and into the woods. I imagine they were in a somewhat subdued mood as they got to work, knowing what they were looking for in the remote area. 1,160 feet east of the abandoned car, Officer Robert Switzer found the body of a Caucasian girl. She lay in a pine thicket, out of view unless someone was looking. A quick check by the officer for signs of life revealed none. A grim pall cast over the law enforcement personnel. There was no identification on the body itself, but the car was the missing Conyers vehicle, and the proximity to it of the dead girl meant that she was almost certainly Pam Conyers. The girl lay on her left side with her left arm tucked under her torso. Her right arm was across her body and her fists were clenched. Her right hand was sort of stuck in some green briar vines growing nearby. Her right leg was wedged between several small pine trees, with the bent knee resting on the tree and the right foot resting on the ground. The left leg lay on the ground, but was bent at the knee, with the lower leg positioned under the raised right leg. It was observed that several pine branches previously attached to the trees under which the victim was hidden had been snapped off. Snapped-off branches had been broken off right above the body, and they were also found partially under her body. The original incident report reads, "The position of the body and the manner in which the legs were tangled among the trees, plus the broken branches above the body, indicated that the victim was apparently carried into the woods and thrown or dropped into the trees." The girl's eyes were open. Her body was fully clothed, wearing a blue turtleneck sweater, which was inside out, light blue bell-bottom pants, and a reddish-brown three-quarter-length wool overcoat, which was unbuttoned. She also wore green knee-high stockings and brown loafers. She had small gold post earrings in her ears. Pine needles and twigs were found in her hair and the back of her coat. The medical examiner was summoned to the scene, and the entire area was secured by police personnel. Dr. Elmer Lindhart arrived and inspected the body. He officially pronounced the girl deceased at 10:25 a.m. At that point, before any further disturbance to the body, measurements were taken by Corporal Robert Mims, and photographs of the body and the surrounding areas were taken by Officer Carol Robinson of the Identification Bureau. Aerial shots of the area were also taken by the state police helicopter, and the homicide investigation began.
Running a business online? Look legit and own your own brand with professional tools from GoDaddy. Instantly build trust with your customers and boost your credibility with an email that matches your domain, so people know you mean business. There's never been a better time. Just go to GoDaddy.com/GD now and choose from a wide variety of popular domains to find one that's right for you. Pair that with a professional email that works for all your business needs, from daily communications to email marketing and everything in between. That's a little price for a lot of credibility. For a limited time, get a domain and matching professional email for just 99 cents a month for 1 year. Go to GoDaddy.com/GD now and look legit with GoDaddy. That's GoDaddy.com/GD now. Again, GoDaddy.com/GD now. There's never been a better time to choose the domain and email that's right for you. New customer purchases only. Products auto-renew separately. See terms on site. GoDaddy.com/GD now.
It is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to ChumbaCasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino-style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Ever wonder why you have insurance for your car or home, but not your digital life? Meet WebRoot Total Protection, your digital bodyguard that is built for real life. WebRoot takes the guessing game out of cybersecurity, so you can confidently browse, bank, and be yourself online without the worry of hackers lurking around the corner. With WebRoot Total Protection, you get antivirus that scans 6 times faster and takes up 33 times less space than the other guys. Identity protection with up to $1 million in fraud expense reimbursement and 24/7 US-based customer support. VPN protection that hides your IP address, personal data, and location from hackers. And cloud backup with unlimited storage that works automatically in the background. With plans for individuals and families, WebRoot makes it easy to live a better digital life. Go to webroot.com/promo and get 50% off today. That's webroot.com/promo to get 50% off today. Live a better digital life with WebRoot, because peace of mind shouldn't be optional.
The body was removed to Fink Funeral Home for identification by next of kin. The Conyerses received the phone call from police that they had been dreading and had to go to the funeral home to identify their oldest child and only daughter. After the identification, Pam was taken to the Baltimore City morgue for a post-mortem by Dr. Werner Spitz, the deputy medical examiner on the case and soon-to-be famous pathologist. When Pam was undressed for autopsy, she was found not to be wearing a bra or underwear, not the norm for her. As I said, her turtleneck sweater was inside out, and her pants contained a piece of greenbrier twig inside the left leg. Pam had no bruises or marks other than those around her throat from someone cutting off her air supply. There were no physical signs of violence or a struggle. No one appeared to have struck her or pinned her. It was beginning to look like a weapon had likely been used to make her compliant. Due to the amount of food left in Pam's stomach, assuming it was her evening dinner, eaten before she went to the bonfire, Dr. Spitz placed her time of death at right around 11 o'clock on Friday the 16th. The cause of death was manual strangulation. Injuries to Pam's vaginal area in the form of a 1/16-inch tear in her vaginal wall told Dr. Spitz that she had been violently raped. Anal and oral swabs were negative for sperm, but a very large quantity of semen was found in Pam's vagina. Dr. Spitz guessed that either one offender had sexually assaulted her numerous times, or more than one man had sexually assaulted her. Further, tests by the FBI lab showed the lack of any semen on Pam's pants. It was concluded that she had not stood upright since the assault's conclusion. Pam had no dirt on her body, although she did have that greenbrier twig inside her pants. Investigators theorized that she hadn't been sexually assaulted where she was found. They guessed that perhaps she'd been sexually assaulted in a vehicle and then had redressed herself hastily, or she had been redressed, her bra and underwear forgotten, lost, or ignored. A later search warrant stated, quote, "The position of and lack of debris on Pamela's body indicated that she had been carried to the recovery site by at least 2 persons," end quote. Dr. Spitz collected fingernail clippings, pubic hair combings, head and pubic hair samples from Pam, and of course the sexual assault kit and all of her clothing. Pam's underwear and bra remained missing. Her mom gave the detectives the exact bra Pam had been wearing so they would know what they were looking for. It was a white bra with lacy cups, size 32C. Testing conducted by the FBI on Pam's clothing detected a small amount of sperm on the lower left side of Pam's knee-length coat. The report says, quote, "This could indicate that the coat was used as a cushion under the body," end quote. Small bloodstains on Pam's coat and slacks were unable to be grouped by ABO blood typing. Several hairs were found on Pam's coat. A head hair of, quote, "negroid origin," approximately 2 inches long, was found on the coat with a root, indicating it had been pulled out. This hair was considered important because it had been forcibly removed, perhaps pulled out by Pam in a struggle. 3 short brown Caucasian hairs, all from the same person, were also found on her coat. A later search warrant specified, quote, "Human hair was recovered from the coat that later proved to be foreign to the victim," end quote. Other evidentiary items on her coat consisted of 2 red woolen fibers and 1 black and white animal hair. No blood, skin, or tissue was found in Pam's fingernail clippings. Let's talk a little bit about Pam. Pamela Lynn Conyers was born to father William Marion Conyers, a field engineer for Westinghouse Corporation, and mom Karen Jean Conyers. Her 2 brothers were William Christopher, age 13, and Jeffrey Allen, age 10. Pam was born in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. The family had moved to Baltimore about 10 years earlier. At the time of her death, she was a junior at Glen Burnie High School. The 5'2" brunette was a B-average student and very active in the school's music program as a member of the concert band, marching band, and other music groups. She was an accomplished flautist. After school, she almost always had some kind of band practice or organized music function. Her parents noted that she loved school and wouldn't miss it even if she was sick. Furthermore, they said Pam had very high morals, and they were certain that she was not sexually experienced. She liked cooking, sewing, music, and watching movies. Pam, being just 16 years old, had only that past summer started driving independently. She got her license the previous June and had done errands for her mom, using the car over the summer to go on shopping trips and take the neighborhood children and her brothers to the county library in Harundale. Pam had been taking the bus to school, boarding between 8:25 and 8:30 in the morning, and typically staying after school for band practice. She returned home, on average, between 5:15 and 5:30. If she couldn't get a ride with friends, she would call her mom to pick her up. She had just started driving to school 10 days earlier. Her parents noted that Pam was very timely and was never more than 5 minutes late. She was very conscientious about her curfew. She wasn't allowed to use the car when she went out at night and relied on her parents to drive her. The bonfire, being an early evening, was an exception to that. Pam's missing brown leather wallet had been a Christmas present from her brothers. Her mom said it contained her driver's license, her student ID, her library card, and her brother's library cards, as well as the library card of her neighbor, Maida Archibald. It also had some friends and family pictures in it. Her wallet and car keys were never found. Detectives searched Pam's room and were unable to locate the diary she had kept. Her mother seemed to believe she had stopped writing in it and had thrown it away. They did find some notes with people's names or other things written on scraps of paper, and they collected those and followed up. A funeral for Pam at the Fink Funeral Home in Glen Burnie was attended by 400 people. Her white coffin was surrounded by more than 60 flower arrangements. According to coverage in the media, most attendees were in tears, boys and girls alike. After the service, the family accompanied the body to her hometown of Hattiesburg, Mississippi, for burial. Let's go over the timeline of Pam's last day. On Friday, October 16th, there was no school for a teacher in-service day. Pam and her mom went to the Harundale Mall to get the things Pam needed for the homecoming dance. They got home around 1:30. At 3, Pam decided she wanted to go back to the mall to get some hairspray, shoe conditioner, shoe dye, and pantyhose. She asked her brother to go with her. Her mom said she always preferred to have someone with her. She drove the family's Volkswagen sedan to the mall with Jeffrey. They got back to the Twin Ridge Drive house at 4 p.m., but Pam said she hadn't had any luck finding the shoe dye that she wanted. Pam started working on the shoes she was planning to wear to the dance and made the family's dinner. At 7, she took the Volkswagen and went to pick up 2 girlfriends, Debbie Hirschberger and Eileen Dorman. They stopped back at the house where Pam changed into her blue turtleneck sweater, new light blue bell-bottoms, and brown coat. Her mother reminded her to be home by 9. They left the house at 7:20 and went to the bonfire. Pam came home by 8:15 and was happy and chipper. She went to the mall at 8:20. Emily Klein, the wife of a Harundale Mall security officer named Joseph Klein, said that on Friday the 16th at exactly 8:40 p.m., a girl in light blue slacks and a brown 3/4 length coat with long brown hair came up to her at Jerry Miller's shoe shop and asked for shoe dye. Emily, the employee, told the girl she didn't have shoe dye and recommended she try the shoe repair shop across from the Equitable Bank. The girl walked out in that direction. When all this timing was considered, police surmised Pam was kidnapped in her own car from the mall parking lot around 8:45 p.m. Her time of death was around 11 p.m. based on the medical examiner's report. Where had she been for those 2.5 hours? 8 full-time detectives were assigned to Pam's case and worked around the clock, determined to nail the animal who had abducted, violated, and murdered an innocent and sweet teenage girl buying dye for her homecoming shoes on the way home to babysit her young brothers. The case was a bellwether, portending the end of an era where nice communities were secure and personal safety was taken for granted. Teens in the area commented that they were terrified, that their parents would no longer let them go to the mall, that they were too scared to walk home from school alone. They were right to be scared. Some monsters are real.
A Mochi moment from Sadie, who writes, I'm not crying, you're crying. This is what I said during my first appointment with my physician at Mochi, because I didn't have to convince him I needed a GLP-1. He understood, and I felt supported, not judged. I came for the weight loss and stayed for the empathy. Thanks, Sadie. I'm Myra Ahmed, founder of Mochi Health. To find your Mochi moment, visit joinmochi.com.
Sadie is a Mochi member compensated for her story.
Running a business online? Look legit and own your own brand with professional tools from GoDaddy. Instantly build trust with your customers and boost your credibility with an email that matches your domain, so people know you mean business. There's never been a better time. Just go to godaddy.com/GD now and choose from a wide variety of popular domains to find one that's right for you. Pair that with a professional email that works for all your business needs, from daily communications to email marketing and everything in between. That's a little price for a lot of credibility. For a limited time, get a domain and matching professional email for just 99 cents a month for 1 year. Go to godaddy.com/GD now and look legit with GoDaddy. That's godaddy.com/GD now. Again, godaddy.com/GD now. There's never been a better time to choose the domain and email that's right for you. New customer purchases only. Products auto-renew separately. See terms on site. godaddy.com/GD now.
Ever wonder why you have insurance for your car or home, but not your digital life? Meet WebRoot Total Protection, your digital bodyguard that is built for real life. WebRoot takes the guessing game out of cybersecurity so you can confidently browse, bank, and be yourself online without the worry of hackers lurking around the corner. With WebRoot Total Protection, you get antivirus that scans 6 times faster and takes up 33 times less space than the other guys. Identity protection with up to $1 million in fraud expense reimbursement and 24/7 US-based customer support. VPN protection that hides your IP address, personal data, and location from hackers. And cloud backup with unlimited storage that works automatically in the background. With plans for individuals and families, WebRoot makes it easy to live a better digital life. Go to webroot.com/promo and get 50% off today. That's webroot.com/promo to get 50% off today. Live a better digital life with WebRoot, because peace of mind shouldn't be optional.
Pam had opted to take her father's car to the mall that night, even though it was low on gas, because unlike the Volkswagen she had driven earlier that day, it had an automatic transmission. Back in those days, an automatic was considered a bit of a luxury. Most cars were still standard. The Dodge Monaco was found unlocked, with no sign of the keys. The bottle of shoe dye was inside, proving that Pam had succeeded in going into the mall and securing her purchase and returned to her vehicle. Tire tracks were found leading into the woods to near where Pam's body was found tossed into the trees. Police Chief Edward Praley told the Capital newspaper after he viewed the scene where the body was found that he felt the body had probably been taken out of a car there. Lieutenant Robert Flannery of the Ann Arundel County PD told the Capital that, quote, the plaster cast taken of the tire tracks indicated that the car used to enter the woods was probably the Conyers family vehicle, end quote. Pam's body had been driven in her own car to where it was dumped, and then the car driven away and parked. Very importantly, a second set of tire tracks was also present in the sandy soil near Pam's car, meaning another vehicle had been at the scene. The killer had a ride. Detective Vernon Woody and Detective Edward Smith were assigned to conduct a second search of the area where the car and body were located, in particular looking for Pam's underwear, bra, car keys, and wallet. They searched the road on both sides, and from the spot where the car was found to where the body was located, as well as 100 feet in each direction around each of those locations. But nothing was found. The Conyers' recovered Dodge Monaco was processed for evidence and prints by the Evidence Collection Unit and was even vacuumed and the contents retained. The interior of the vehicle appeared to have been wiped clean. No prints were found on mirrors, door handles, or the steering wheel. But on the exterior, 5 fresh, clear, latent prints were recovered from the car that did not belong to the family or anyone else they could think of who had recently been in the vehicle. 17 of Pam's friends were even printed to rule them out. The person who left the prints, which was essentially a handprint, remained unknown. 2 Salem cigarette butts were also collected from the car's ashtray. William Conyers did not smoke, and Karen Conyers smoked but didn't smoke that brand and didn't use the car ashtray. Pam's parents were certain that she didn't smoke because she was always urging her mom to quit. And they said they had no friends or neighbors who smoked Salem cigarettes that they knew of. Finally, the trunk. The trunk lid of the Dodge Monaco was found partially open. This led investigators to believe that Pam had been transported in the trunk to the spot where she was found. This from the police report, quote, "It was felt by Mr. Conyers that Pamela would have had no reason to enter the trunk of the 1966 Dodge, and nothing seemed out of the ordinary in the trunk when he examined it after the vehicle was recovered. Vacuumings of the trunk found no head hairs of Pam's, but it was still felt that she was likely inside the trunk perhaps as long as overnight," end quote. Her father also reported that Pam drove with the seat all the way forward. The seat was found pushed back. The area where the car and body were found was thoroughly searched, and items lying around were collected in case they'd been discarded by Pam's killer. There was a lot of media coverage of a so-called hippie house where rumor had it Pam had been taken and killed. The house, one of the homes that had been vacated to clear the way for the massive roadway construction project, was dilapidated and abandoned, and had been covered in graffiti. Several residents claimed they knew for a fact that hippies used the house to congregate. The house, just 200 yards from where Pam's body was found, was thoroughly processed, but no evidence was found to indicate that Pam had ever been there. Residents and occupants of houses and buildings close to where Pam was found were canvassed by the Ann Arundel PD. One resident who lived about a half mile from the scene, named Gordon W., told the officers that on Friday night the 16th, sometime between 10 and 11 p.m., he heard a female screaming at the intersection of Waterford Road and Old Annapolis Road. He himself lived just 2 houses from the intersection and believed the scream appeared to be coming from the northeast corner of the intersection. He looked out the window and saw the roof of a dark vehicle at that location, but it soon drove away. Another witness, Alma Ruth Bullock, who also lived right near the intersection, said her dogs were barking like crazy between 10 and midnight on that same night. Then there were some very important witnesses whose reports were detailed and deemed quite important. On Wednesday, October 21, 1970, Corporal Pucci and Detective Charles Schreiber interviewed a William Russell B. William advised that around 10:30 or 11 on Saturday, October 17th, he and his buddies Mike M. and Jerry P. were hunting in the wooded area where Pam's car and body were found. They were certain that during this morning hunting trip, the car was not there. William said that later that day, he spoke with Mike, who had gone back out on an afternoon hunting trip with a Leonard L. Quote, during the hunting trip, Mike and Leonard observed a gold automobile that was described as the victim's vehicle, end quote. The next day, they interviewed this Leonard L., who said at around 9:30 on the 17th, he went hunting by himself in the wooded area where Pam's body and car were later found. He wasn't sure about the time, but he was sure that he saw a car that was described as similar to Pam's parked next to a large bush, approximately 20 feet west of the wooded area where her body was later found. Then around 1:30, Leonard and Mike went out hunting together. During the second hunting trip, they saw what appeared to be the same car that had been parked by the bush, but it had been moved approximately 20 feet north and parked next to a very large oak tree, about 30 feet northwest of the area where Pam was found. The interview with Michael M. revealed that he was confused as to the time he went hunting on the 17th, but he did remember he saw Pam's car by the oak tree. Quote, William, Leonard, and Mike submitted to polygraph exams conducted by Sergeant Richard Davis as to whether they moved the vehicle. William and Leonard showed truthfulness. Mike had deception in certain questions which indicated he was confused or wasn't telling the truth. He was re-interviewed and denied tampering with the victim's automobile, end quote. Well, this was all extremely confusing. Why would the car be in one place early on Saturday morning and in another later that day? Police came to believe that the car was moved. This from the police report, quote, as a result of information obtained from the aforementioned juveniles, there is a possibility that the person or persons responsible for Pam's death could have moved the vehicle on 2 or 3 different occasions. There is a further possibility that this person or persons had transported the victim's body to this location during the morning hours of Saturday, October 17, and that he or they were in the area when the boys were hunting, end quote. Notes indicate that the detectives felt the rape and murder happened elsewhere. The dump site was chosen only as a place to discard the vehicle and the body. I wondered, why remove the body from the car trunk at all? Since they were abandoning the car, why not just leave the body in it? Presumably, the killer knew the car was hard to hide and would likely be found. Separating Pam from the car might delay police in locating her. But why not separate them more than 1/5 of a mile? Why not dump the body there and then use the car to drive away and leave it elsewhere, far from the scene? That way Pam might never have been found. The only thing I can think of is that perhaps the killer was too afraid to drive Pam's car around on that Saturday. He might even have heard that there was a be on the lookout out for it. A little history on the scene of the crime. The Harundale Mall in Glen Burnie, Maryland. The mall was built in 1958 and at the time was the first such mall, a giant enclosed indoor shopping center east of the Mississippi River. The structure ended up being leveled in 1997 and rebuilt as Harundale Plaza. Detectives James Hudson and Detective Jay Hannon were assigned to canvass the Harundale Mall area to try to find anybody who might have been there and seen something on Friday night. Remember that the Sellis Shoes store clerk remembered seeing a girl matching Pam's description buying shoe dye on Friday night. After that, they couldn't locate anyone who had seen a thing. Pam just disappeared. Lieutenant Robert Flannery told the Capitol News early on, quote, no one saw a thing at the mall or anywhere else. Most murder cases, you have at least someone who saw something. Detective Carter and Detective Apperson spent the day on October 28th and 29th, going to every store in the mall and gathering the names of all mall employees. The names were placed in the case file and one by one they were vetted. For example, on November 27th, Detective Charles Schreiber interviewed Emery Tony Brown, who was an employee at the Sellis shoe repair shop in the mall, where Pam had bought the shoe dye. He said on the day Pam went missing, he wasn't at the store. He was actually working at a different shop in the Southdale Shopping Center. Unfortunately, this store retained no time cards, so they couldn't verify this alibi, but Emery was cleared by a polygraph exam conducted by Sergeant Vincent Frantum. Hair samples were also collected from Emery, who was black, and submitted to the FBI. Then detectives finally did locate one witness who had important information, although I don't have details on timing or really any specifics. A search warrant filed later in the case stated, a canvass of the Harundale Mall area by the investigators revealed that a female subject matching Pam's description was seen talking to a white male approximately 30 years of age in the rear parking lot of the mall, end quote. This was based on a brief report by an Officer Mayo, which stated that Pam was seen by a girl named Sue speaking with a man in his 30s behind the mall. Who was this older white male? Police desperately wanted to find out. Detectives Mulholland and Gerald Tippett went to the unopened Mountain Road and spoke with members of the construction crew who were working on the road project. They hoped to get any information about people seen in the area, anything unusual, sightings of Pam's car, and so on. Detectives Hudson and Hannon also gathered the names of the State Road Commission personnel working the site, as well as names of every construction worker employed by the subcontractors of the project. According to the notes in the file, all of these people were interviewed, and no one could provide any useful information.
Running a business online? Look legit and own your own brand with professional tools from GoDaddy. Instantly build trust with your customers and boost your credibility with an email that matches your domain, so people know you mean business. There's never been a better time. Just go to godaddy.com/GD now and choose from a wide variety of popular domains to find one that's right for you. Pair that with a professional email that works for all your business needs, from daily communications to email marketing and everything in between. That's a little price for a lot of credibility. For a limited time, get a domain and matching professional email for just 99 cents a month for 1 year. Go to godaddy.com/GD now and look legit with GoDaddy. That's godaddy.com/GD now. Again, godaddy.com/GD now. There's never been a better time to choose the domain and email that's right for you. New customer purchases only. Products auto-renew separately. See terms on site. godaddy.com/GD now.
It is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to ChumbaCasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino-style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Ever wonder why you have insurance for your car or home, but not your digital life? Meet WebRoot Total Protection, your digital bodyguard that is built for real life. WebRoot takes the guessing game out of cybersecurity, so you can confidently browse, bank, and be yourself online without the worry of hackers lurking around the corner. With WebRoot Total Protection, you get antivirus that scans 6 times faster and takes up 33 times less space than the other guys. Identity protection with up to $1 million in fraud expense reimbursement and 24/7 US-based customer support. VPN protection that hides your IP address, personal data, and location from hackers. And cloud backup with unlimited storage that works automatically in the background. With plans for individuals and families, WebRoot makes it easy to live a better digital life. Go to webroot.com/promo and get 50% off today. That's webroot.com/promo to get 50% off today. Live a better digital life with WebRoot, because peace of mind shouldn't be optional.
On the 21st, Detective Alan Carter and Detective Lee Apperson were assigned to go to the Glen Burnie High School and start interviewing Pam's friends. The principal, Craig Lundberg, sat in on the interviews. They spoke with her friend Deborah, who was a very good friend of Pam's and was with her on Friday night at the bonfire. Pam had picked her up in her Volkswagen around 7:05 p.m. Friday, along with their friend Eileen. They went to the bonfire and pep rally, which was part of homecoming weekend. They got there around 7:15 and walked around and chatted with lots of people. Deborah stated that Pam did talk with her ex-boyfriend, whom she had dated for about 9 months, Tim H., and several other people, but didn't seem to talk about anything important. Pam left around 8:10 p.m. by herself. She had to be home by 9, and the bonfire was kind of breaking up anyway. Deborah said Pam said she was going home. She absolutely did not say anything about meeting up with anybody. Deborah did say that Pam still really liked her ex-boyfriend Tim very much, but he'd broken up with her just before school started. She was going to the homecoming dance instead with Kim R. Her parents didn't know Kim, but were happy about this because Pam had been sad when Tim had dumped her. Ouch, we've all been there. Next up for an interview was the ex-boyfriend Tim. He said he and Pam broke up just before school because he was really busy with athletics and school, and Pam was busy with music. He felt the breakup was mutual and said they were still friends. He did hear that Pam still had a crush on him, but he was dating other girls. He said they were not sexually active because Pam wasn't that kind of girl. Pam's family confirmed that Pam still cried on occasion over Tim breaking things off with her. It sounds to me as though Tim was interested in girls who were a little more popular. His older brother Richard was labeled the most popular boy in the senior class. Pam was a rule follower, a band geek, a homebody, and somebody who absolutely did not drink or do drugs and didn't like people that did. Tim said he last saw Pam on Friday night at the bonfire and they said hello to each other. Then he left and walked his new girlfriend, Pam D., to her father's store, and then he went home, arriving at 9:15. He spent the rest of the night at home, and his mother, father, and 2 sisters could vouch for him. He also agreed to take a polygraph exam if requested. The Conyers' parents told the detectives they would absolutely not consider Tim a possible suspect. But of course, since Pam would have been likely to allow Tim into her car, he had to be considered. Detectives Carter and Apperson then went to the home of Lee B. He had called the Central District and spoke with Lieutenant Flannery, expressing an interest in the case. He told the investigators he had French and music classes with Pam, and he and their other classmates had taken up a collection for flowers for the family. The teens had heard several rumors surrounding Pam's death, so they decided to ask the police for an update on the investigation. Lee had been selected by his classmates to make the call. Of course, investigators found this to be a bit unusual, so they grilled Lee. He said he last saw Pam Thursday night at a dance at Spalding High School on New Cut Road. He said hi to her, they chatted for a couple of minutes, and he saw her on and off during the course of the evening until he left around 11:30. He said she seemed to be by herself. He described her as a quiet girl who was nice and sweet. Nancy Jean Martin was a neighbor and friend of Pam's who told the detective she'd known Pam for years. She confirmed Pam didn't go out that much and wasn't dating anyone special at the time. She certainly did not hang out at the Harundale Mall or hang out with any kids that hung out there. Pam didn't take drugs or drink either. Detectives spoke with Vaughn A., a black male who was Pam's music teacher at Glen Burnie High School. He said on Friday he was at the Maryland State Teachers Convention in Baltimore City, and then he went to a friend's house in Baltimore. Vaughn was eliminated as a suspect through a polygraph examination and hair samples submitted to the FBI for comparison to the black hair sample found on Pam's coat. Speaking of hair, the Ann Arundel Police Department sent a giant batch of evidence to the FBI lab in Washington for analysis. These included items collected from Pam's car, like the cigarette butts, a napkin, and the vacuumed-up fibers and hairs, her clothing, items found on the ground around the area of the dump site and the abandoned car, such as beer cans, and papers and possessions of Pam's from her locker and room. This is a list that was typed up for the case file of known facts of the case as of December 16, 1970. 1. Pam was already dead when she was dumped and had probably been dead 12 hours, based on stomach contents and last meal timing. 2. She was transported to the wooded area, possibly in the trunk of her car, during the morning hours of Saturday, October 17th, between 10 and 12. 3. The killer was in the area when the boys were hunting that Saturday morning, based on the fact that the car was moved at different times. 4. Pam was redressed after the sexual assault. 5. Based on the mileage in the car when it was last serviced and the amount of gasoline in the car, the automobile was not driven excessive distances, indicating that everything went down locally in the Glen Burnie, Pasadena area. 6. Pam was attacked in an area that was dirt-free based on the fact that her body was free of debris and dirt. 7. Pam's killer was possibly a black male based on the possibly African-American hairs found on her coat. And 8. Pam's coat was used as a pad under her body when the sexual assault occurred based on sperm found on it. I'm now going to address a few of the persons of interest whom detectives spoke with or looked at. There were hundreds of men looked at. These are just a few who seemed particularly interesting. On the 22nd, Sergeant Harrell and Detective Arthur Taylor followed up on a tip they received about a former North Arundel Hospital maintenance employee named Stephen C. Stephen had been talking to all sorts of people about Pam, saying he was a friend of hers and that he had helped look for her when she was missing. Co-workers who knew him reported that he often hung out at the Harundale Mall and at Glen Burnie High School. He was a known drinker and had a very bad temper. People who knew him said he was prone to fits of anger. Sergeant Harrell and Detective Taylor interviewed Steve C. on October 26th at the Harundale Mall. They asked him why he had been telling people he knew the victim personally. Upon intensive questioning, Steve admitted he didn't actually know Pam. Steve sounded like one of those guys who liked to brag about being involved in things he wasn't. A quote from the report: "His fingerprints were rolled and compared with the latents taken from the victim's car with no match. He was released." Investigators interviewed a Jacqueline F., who stated that on Saturday the 17th, she was at the Harundale Mall around lunchtime, and she noticed a strange man was following her from store to store. She only got away from him by running through one of the stores and jumping into her car. She saw him follow her into the parking lot and look around for her. He was a white male in his early 20s with blonde hair that was long in the back, and he stood about 5 feet 10 and a half and was of medium build. When he didn't see her, he got into a late model black compact car and drove off. Police were interested in finding out who this man was, but were unsuccessful in doing so. Detective Taylor and Sergeant Harrell interviewed a Terry M., whom they referred to as one of the leaders of the hippie group of teenagers that frequented the mall. Terry lived 5 houses away from Pam, but said he didn't know her personally. Terry denied being at the mall at all on Friday night and said he would take a polygraph about that. He said it was terrible that something like this had happened to a good girl like Pam. Terry wasn't really a suspect, but after Pam's murder, there was a community movement to do away with a teen center that was attached to the mall. It was felt that it attracted these hippie types and brought the wrong element into the area. There were several meetings and forums about this teen center, which ended up staying right where it was. A lot of investigative effort went into figuring out the source of the African-American hair found on Pam's coat. The hair became more and more interesting as investigators learned that the chances that the hair was on Pam's coat through innocent means were slim. No one had owned the car before the Conyers family, so the hair had not been inherited with the vehicle. Pam had only one black friend in junior high, and although she was friendly with the black teenage boy who was the president of the 7th grade Modern Music Masters Orchestra, they didn't think he had ever been in her car. Neither had her music teacher, Vaughn, who had been interviewed by police. Police learned the coat had not been worn since the previous spring, so it was possible the hair was left over from an incident earlier in the year, but that seemed kind of unlikely. The investigators questioned the Conyerses about whether Pam would have given anyone a ride home from the mall, and her parents said she always checked with her parents before she drove anyone home, and that was with her close friends. She never would have driven a stranger, they asserted. So the investigators were all in on tracking down the source of the hair and pursued some black persons of interest, with a little extra interest. Detective Hudson and Detective Hanan interviewed a Robert C., a black male who was known to hang around the mall. Looking at her photo, Robert said he had seen Pam around the mall, which was weird, and detectives found he had a laundry slip in his pocket from Sella's shoe store, which indicated he dropped off a pair of pants and shirt to be laundered on the very same day that Pam had disappeared. The investigators collected a strand of Robert's hair and sent it to the FBI lab in Washington. Corporal Pucci and Detective Schreiber interviewed Alvin L., who was a regular at the Harundale Mall and had been taken into custody on an unrelated charge. Alvin admitted that he was at the mall on Friday the 16th, but denied having any connection with Pam or her murder. He said a lot of talk was going around the mall about her death, but no one appeared to know anything concrete. A hair sample was collected from him as well. Next up was Larry H. He also admitted to being at the mall at 8 p.m. on Friday, October 16th. He denied having any connection to Pam's death or even knowing her. A hair was collected from him as well, simply because he was black and was at the mall at the time in question. None of these men's hairs matched the hair in evidence, although some of them were deemed similar. Polygraphs were used to rule these guys out. The investigation plowed on. I'm leaving out a ton of interviews of anonymous callers and suspicious neighbors and wannabe detectives, reporting strange cars and screaming teenagers and creeps and hippies. The police essentially talked to all the men who were known to loiter around the mall. They talked to local men who committed crimes that were sexual in nature. They talked to several people who admitted making up that they had information, including one guy who was hoping to get other charges dropped. Reviewing the case file, I couldn't believe how many people wasted the investigators' time in this case.
A Mochi moment from Sadie, who writes, I'm not crying, you're crying. This is what I said during my first appointment with my physician at Mochi, because I didn't have to convince him I needed a GLP-1. He understood, and I felt supported, not judged. I came for the weight loss and stayed for the empathy. Thanks, Sadie. I'm Myra Ahmed, founder of Mochi Health. To find your Mochi moment, visit joinmochi.com.
Sadie is a Mochi member compensated for her story.
Running a business online? Look legit and own your own brand with professional tools from GoDaddy. Instantly build trust with your customers and boost your credibility with an email that matches your domain, so people know you mean business. There's never been a better time. Just go to godaddy.com/GD now and choose from a wide variety of popular domains to find one that's right for you. Pair that with a professional email that works for all your business needs, from daily communications to email marketing and everything in between. That's a little price for a lot of credibility. For a limited time, get a domain and matching professional email for just 99 cents a month for 1 year. Go to godaddy.com/GD now and look legit with GoDaddy. That's godaddy.com/GD now. Again, godaddy.com/GD now. There's never been a better time to choose the domain and email that's right for you. New customer purchases only. Products auto-renew separately. See terms on site. godaddy.com/GD now.
Ever wonder why you have insurance for your car or home, but not your digital life? Meet WebRoot Total Protection, your digital bodyguard that is built for real life. WebRoot takes the guessing game out of cybersecurity, so you can confidently browse, bank, and be yourself online without the worry of hackers lurking around the corner. With WebRoot Total Protection, you get antivirus that scans 6 times faster and takes up 33 times less space than the other guys. Identity protection with up to $1 million in fraud expense reimbursement and 24/7 US-based customer support. VPN protection that hides your IP address, personal data, and location from hackers. And cloud backup with unlimited storage that works automatically in the background. With plans for individuals and families, WebRoot makes it easy to live a better digital life. Go to webroot.com/promo and get 50% off today. That's webroot.com/promo to get 50% off today. Live a better digital life with WebRoot, because peace of mind shouldn't be optional.
As we know, often in cases like this, when the crime appears to have been random, police start to look at similar crimes in the area. We all know that many perps have an MO. This is not the same as a signature. An MO means simply that the same guy commits the same type of crime the same way on repeat. A guy hiding in the back seat of women's parked cars and then raping them would be a good example. This was a theory police had of what could have happened to Pam, because no one had heard screaming or seen a girl being forced into a car, which pointed to a very stealthy attack such as that carried out in a vehicle. Remember that Pam's shoe dye purchase was found in the car, so police knew she had put it there. If she'd been attacked elsewhere, they felt it would have been dropped or discarded. Pam's parents remembered that the car Pam was driving might have had an unlocked passenger door, since Pam's brother had been riding in the vehicle that evening with his dad before Pam took the car. This was before the days of the remote locking system where you press a button on your keychain and the car locks. Back in 1970, you had to lock each door individually using an actual key. It was not a stretch to guess that Pam might simply have neglected to fully lock the car when she parked it at the mall, and someone had gotten inside and hidden, waiting for her. The stuff of nightmares. And there were some crimes in Ann Arundel County in this general time period that seemed very similar. In fact, Sergeant Harrell and Detective Taylor looked into an incident that had happened the very same week as Pam's murder. On Monday, October 19th, 1970, between 9:30 and 10 p.m., a woman named Sandra had gotten into her car in the parking lot at the ITT Business Institute in Annapolis. As she was seated in the driver's seat, a man who was hiding in the back pulled a knife on her and told her, "Do what I tell you and you won't get hurt." He forced her to drive some distance away and made her park, and then he raped her in the vehicle. He said to her, "If you don't do what I say, I'll have to do to you what I did to another girl last night." The assailant didn't harm Sandra other than the rape. He finished and ran off. Sandra was able to describe her rapist. He was a black male, medium height, maybe 5'9", with a medium complexion and short hair. He was wearing a red jacket. This man had attempted to strike again. Police learned that a service station attendant at the Harundale Texaco had very recently discovered a black male hiding in the rear of a female customer's car. The attendant kept the woman away from her car and the subject fled. This all sounded very interesting to the investigators, since the MO fit their theory of the crime and the suspect, a black male, fit their evidence. In another crime that has been mentioned in many media sources as having a possible, even likely connection to Pam's case, in November 1969, a woman had been murdered after shopping at the Glen Burnie Mall, just 2 miles from the Harundale Mall. This was Joyce Helen Malecki, whose body was found near the Little Patuxent River in Soldiers Park, with her hands tied behind her back and her throat cut. Her car was found in Odenton. After shopping at the Glen Burnie Mall, she had driven toward the military base at Fort Meade, where she planned to meet her boyfriend, but she never made it. Her autopsy revealed she had been sexually assaulted, bludgeoned, and strangled, as well as having her throat cut. Joyce was killed a year before Pam, and Ann Arundel County Police Chief Edward Praley was alerted to Joyce's case by the FBI agent who came to Pam's crime scene. The FBI had been called in because Pam's case was initially an abduction, but once she was found, their role took a back seat. After looking into Joyce's case, Lieutenant Robert Flannery of the AAPD said they couldn't rule out that Joyce's and Pam's murders were related. Both women had been shopping alone at malls right before they were found raped and murdered. Both of their vehicles appeared to have been used in the commission of the crimes. Unfortunately, Joyce's case remains unsolved to this day, so it proved not to be very helpful for police investigating Pam's. Joyce was exhumed in 2023 after her case received publicity in the Netflix documentary The Keepers, as potentially being linked to the murder of sister Kathy Sesnick. Another case that has been talked about as possibly connected to Pam's and Joyce's took place in September 1971. Grace Elizabeth Montaigne was a 16-year-old aspiring model who left Franklin Senior High School on the evening of September 27th to attend pageant practice. After this, she was seen getting into a car driven by persons unknown. Her body was found 2 days later behind Mount Auburn Cemetery in Baltimore, with cigarette burns and her skull crushed by a cinder block. She had been raped and murdered in an incredibly brutal fashion. Grace's case, too, remains unsolved. There are significant differences with Pam's case, including the cause of death and the location, but the two cases were often mentioned in one breath as notorious, unsolved homicides of teenage girls near Baltimore, occurring less than a year apart. In another case, on October 1st, 1969, 2 Glen Burnie young women, ages 19 and 20, were abducted from the Corvette parking lot on Ritchie Highway by a man who stuck a gun through their car window and ordered them to drive to a wooded area in Pasadena. There he made them park and get out of the car and undress, and he raped both of them for 3 hours. He then drove their car and dropped them off and headed to the Glen Burnie Mall, where he abandoned the vehicle in the parking lot. These 2 women survived their ordeal, but the fact that Pam did not certainly did not rule out that the incidents were related. And of course, there were the similarities that a mall was involved, the victims were transported in their own vehicle, and the rape occurred in the woods in sparsely settled Pasadena. The specifics of the dual rape case were compared to the evidence in Pam's case, but again, with the case unsolved, it wasn't that much help. The survivors were able to provide a description of their attacker, whom they said was neatly dressed. No connection has ever been proven. And then, on December 14, 1970, it happened again. A 20-year-old woman went shopping at the Glen Burnie Mall that night and emerged with her shopping bags around 9:15 to discover that her car had a flat tire. This does not appear to have been an accident because a 30-year-old man came up to her and asked her if she needed help changing her tire. She gratefully accepted his offer, and he changed the tire. Then he talked her into taking the flat tire to a tire repair shop. He said he would ride with her, and he got in the passenger seat. She pulled out on Ritchie Highway, and when she was stopped in traffic, her assailant grabbed her and forced her into the passenger seat and took the wheel. He drove off down Ritchie Highway, but when they slowed to a light, the survivor jumped out of the car and began screaming for help. The abductor drove off in her car. The survivor reported the incident to police, who found her car in flames less than a mile away. This from a December 16, 1970 article in the Capital News. Quote, "The description of the man was similar to that of a man who abducted 2 women and sexually attacked them in a Glen Burnie shopping center parking lot in 1969. He was white, about 30 years old, medium-length brown hair, and about 5'10" tall with a medium build." End quote. So as you can hear, there seemed to be a pattern in 1969 and 1970 of young women being attacked in their vehicles, and the incidents involved Ann Arundel malls, which are only about 2 miles apart. A man or men had figured out that malls attract female patrons who often walk to their cars alone in parking lots that back then were unattended and unmonitored by any kind of surveillance. It was the perfect hunting ground for predators. But no one knew who they were or how to catch them. Time passed and the investigation carried into November and then December. Detectives kept expanding the scope of their inquiry after unsuccessfully trying to tie the crime to people who knew Pam, had connections to the mall, or who were local criminals or sex offenders. By a month after the murder, the number of full-time detectives at work on the case was down to 4. According to Lieutenant Robert Flannery of the Ann Arundel PD, by this point, 900 man-hours had been expended, 200 leads had been run down, and 25 men had been ruled out. In January 1971, Detective Schreiber and Corporal Pucci followed up on an Edward P., a black male stationed at Fort Meade who was wanted in Delaware for attempted sexual assault. It was thought that Edward P. could have attacked Pam once he came to Maryland for his military post. The Ann Arundel County PD officers obtained a Maryland warrant off the teletype, and it was executed by CID officers at Fort Meade. Edward P. was taken into custody, and Corporal Pucci and Detective Schreiber interviewed him about Pam's murder. He denied having anything to do with it, or ever having been at the Harundale Mall, or in the Pasadena and Millersville sections of Ann Arundel County at all. He agreed to take a polygraph, and the results showed that he was truthful in the information he related during the interview. He was further eliminated as a suspect through his fingerprints, although hair samples were taken and submitted to the FBI. Edward was then extradited to Delaware to face his charges there. The next interview on the case was not conducted until August 6, 1971, by Detective Schreiber and Detective Epperson. They went to Montgomery County to interview a Charles David Leon, a white male. Leon was for a time a prime suspect in Pam's case because he was violent, seemed mentally unhinged, and was in Maryland at the time of Pam's murder. Leon had stolen a car in Montgomery County and engaged in a high-speed chase with police, who spotted the stolen vehicle on the Capitol Beltway in the D.C. area. They gave chase, with the vehicles of both the officers and the suspect getting up to speeds of 110 miles an hour before they were finally able to pull him over. Leon jumped out of the car and tried to get away and then threatened officers with a knife before surrendering. When the police arrested Leon, they learned that he was wanted in New Jersey. He had killed a 49-year-old woman named Ethel Ling in her parked car in the parking lot of a shopping mall there and had stolen her purse and credit cards. He had used one of the credit cards at a New Jersey gas station to fuel up the stolen vehicle he was driving, and a suspicious attendant had copied down his license plate. Leon was held on auto theft charges in Maryland, as investigators there wanted to talk to him about unsolved murders in their state before sending him to New Jersey for prosecution. They learned that he had been charged with the rape of several women in the Washington, D.C. area. His M.O. was to disable his victims' cars by removing the coil wire, and when they couldn't get it started, he would offer his help and then test drive it for them with them in the car. Then he would rape them. Well, Pam Conyers came to mind. There was no evidence that her car had been tampered with, but it certainly could have happened that way, and Leon had killed a woman in her car at a shopping mall and certainly seemed capable of Pam's murder as well. Leon told the officers that the murder in New Jersey was just a test to see if he could do it or not. He saw a woman sitting in her car waiting for the mall to open, and he walked over, emptied 5 shots into her, reloaded, and then sat on the curb next to her car and talked to her while waiting for her to die. He said he told her, "Nothing personal, I just wanted to see what it was like to kill someone." Leon recently had been released from prison on May 28, 1971, and had also spent some time in St. Elizabeth's Mental Hospital in Washington, D.C. Fingerprints were obtained from Leon and forwarded to the Identification Bureau. I imagine everyone was extremely disappointed when they didn't match the suspect prints. Leon denied having anything to do with Pam's murder and ever having been in Ann Arundel County, and agreed to take a polygraph. I don't have the results, but Leon was deemed not to be the man who killed Pam. He hung himself with a belt in his cell in January 1972. And then along came some information that led investigators to believe they were finally on the trail of Pam's killer. On August 12, 1971, 2 members of the Delaware State Police arrived at the Northern District of the Ann Arundel County PD. These were Sergeant Saxton and Trooper Morris. They were investigating an arson and murder that happened in Farmington, Delaware, on December 12, 1970. The victim had been burnt to death in an arson fire that burned down a supposedly abandoned shack in Farmington. After the fire was extinguished, the body was discovered, and all they could identify was a torso that contained a prostate gland, identifying the subject as a male of an unknown race, probably in his early 20s. However, the FBI was able to piece together enough of his skull to note that the victim had been shot in the back of the head, and then 2 quarts of brake fluid had been poured over the body, and the whole thing set alight, Brass rivets from a pair of denim blue jeans were located in the ashes. The victim in the murder had not been identified, but an informant had told Sergeant Sexton that the victim might possibly be a Carl Wayne McNeil. All right, so what the heck does any of this have to do with Pam Conyers? Well, Sergeant Saxton's informant told him that a man named Charles Robert Derrickson had committed this arson and murder, killing McNeil because McNeil was blackmailing him. Stay with me here. In late 1970, the two men, Derrickson and McNeil, had lived together in an apartment over a drugstore in the Ferndale, Maryland area right outside Baltimore. At some point toward the end of 1970, the two of them were driving around and picked up a 15 or 16-year-old white female, and Derrickson had raped her. According to the informant, Derrickson's nephew, McNeil was just the driver of the vehicle, but after the rape, he began extorting money from Derrickson, saying he would turn him in if he didn't get paid. McNeil then tried to extort Derrickson out of the title to his vehicle. Derrickson told him, "It's registered in Delaware. To turn over the title, we have to go to the Delaware DMV." So on December 12, 1970, they drove to Delaware, where Derrickson lured McNeil to the shack and shot him in the head and tried to make it appear that he had died in a fire. Police investigation into Charles Robert Derrickson and Carl Wayne McNeil revealed both men had extensive records. When they were living together in Ferndale, two girlfriends had lived with them but moved out after McNeil assaulted one of them. Interviews with members of Derrickson's family revealed that while he was drunk, he made remarks about McNeil raping and possibly killing a young girl. So they had these two upstanding citizens who had lived in the same area where Pam Conyers had been raped and killed at the same time. There was some indication that one or both of them had taken part in raping and killing a teenage girl. Further, they had an associate named Eric B., a black male, who the police believed had helped Derrickson get rid of McNeil. Quote, "The possibility existed that Eric B. was also present when Derrickson committed the offense on the teenage girl in Maryland. Hair samples retrieved from Eric B. were submitted to the FBI lab, who concluded that they possessed certain similarities as the hair recovered from Pam Conyers' coat." End quote. Investigators noted that Derrickson matched the very scant description of the young white male seen talking to Pam in the mall parking lot. Derrickson had admitted to his nephew that he raped a young girl in Maryland. Furthermore, Derrickson told his sister that killing someone was easier the second time, referring to his murder of McNeil. That indicated, of course, that he had killed someone the first time. And the men had hastily left the state very soon after Pam was slain. The 1971 investigators were very interested in the involvement of Derrickson and McNeil in the Pam Conyers murder. However, they didn't have enough evidence to prove it. Back then, of course, they didn't have any DNA. They had no hairs or other physical evidence linking either suspect definitively to Pam. They had compared the fingerprints of both men from previous arrests to those found on Pam's car with no luck. They couldn't make an arrest based on the statements made by others about their culpability. A later search warrant affidavit reads, "The investigators at the time believed that Charles Derrickson, assisted in some fashion by McNeil and Eric B., raped and killed Pamela Lynn Conyers. However, due to the lack of any other evidence and/or technology to examine the evidence, the investigation came to a standstill." End quote.
Running a business online? Look legit and own your own brand with professional tools from GoDaddy. Instantly build trust with your customers and boost your credibility with an email that matches your domain, so people know you mean business. There's never been a better time. Just go to GoDaddy.com/GD now and choose from a wide variety of popular domains to find one that's right for you. Pair that with a professional email that works for all your business needs, from daily communications to email marketing and everything in between. That's a little price for a lot of credibility. For a limited time, get a domain and matching professional email for just 99 cents a month for 1 year. Go to GoDaddy.com/GD now and look legit with GoDaddy. That's GoDaddy.com/GD now. Again, GoDaddy.com/GD now. There's never been a better time to choose the domain and email that's right for you. New customer purchases only. Products auto-renew separately. See terms on site. GoDaddy.com/GD now.
It is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to ChumbaCasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino-style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Ever wonder why you have insurance for your car or home, but not your digital life? Meet WebRoot Total Protection, your digital bodyguard that is built for real life. WebRoot takes the guessing game out of cybersecurity, so you can confidently browse, bank, and be yourself online without the worry of hackers lurking around the corner. With WebRoot Total Protection, you get antivirus that scans 6 times faster and takes up 33 times less space than the other guys. Identity protection with up to $1 million in fraud expense reimbursement and 24/7 US-based customer support. VPN protection that hides your IP address, personal data, and location from hackers. And cloud backup with unlimited storage that works automatically in the background. With plans for individuals and families, WebRoot makes it easy to live a better digital life. Go to webroot.com/promo and get 50% off today. That's webroot.com/promo to get 50% off today. Live a better digital life with WebRoot, because peace of mind shouldn't be optional.
The Baltimore Sun ran an article about Pam's unsolved case on the first anniversary of her murder. It was at the time one of only 5 unsolved homicides in Ann Arundel County. Ann Arundel Police Captain Lloyd Smith told the Sun, quote, "We are still trying to crack the case, and I believe we will someday. I will never stop trying as long as I am chief of detectives," end quote. Smith said that by this time, about 70 possible suspects had been ruled out and 200 additional people questioned. 3,000 man-hours had been invested in the case with not much to show for it. Quote, "3 times I have felt so close to an arrest that I almost told my men to go out and get him," the chief detective said. But we later found out that 2 of those suspects were out of the area at the time of the slaying, and the other was a little off his trolley, end quote. I think there he was talking about Derrickson and McNeil and the man who hung himself, Leon. Time passed. There was a brief resurgence of the case in 1975 when a crimes against persons detective Jackson received a tip from an arrestee that he had information on Pam's case. This guy, Ray G., reported that a guy named Robert Gibson had killed Pam, along with John and Jack Smith, and a witness to the whole thing was a guy named John Albert Brown of Glen Burnie. Ray took a polygraph that indicated that he was generally being truthful, but he negotiated a weekend out of jail so he could find this John Brown for the police, and they let him out, and he basically split town. They did manage to arrest John Brown, who was not cooperative and seemed to be mentally unable to proceed with interviews. They had him evaluated by Dr. Wilfred Freinig, the director of forensic psychiatry of the Maryland Department of Mental Hygiene, who declared that John Brown was not competent to be interviewed. He said Brown was a very dangerous subject for a forensic psychiatrist to attempt to interview. He could not separate fantasy from reality. Brown was released to his parents with the promise to seek medical care for his mental health and to contact police when he improved. I don't think that ever happened. A warrant was issued for Ray G., but I don't know if police ever got him. In 1975, a man named Herman D. Brown was arrested for a series of rapes and sexual assaults in Pasadena. Police had noted that a common license plate was seen in the vicinity of a number of the rapes and had nailed Brown. The unemployed sanitation worker was charged with 4 rapes, 1 attempted rape, 2 burglaries, 1 armed robbery, and an attempted armed robbery. Anne Arundel County Police immediately wondered whether Brown could be Pam's killer. His MO was completely different than Pam's killers. He generally targeted young women and teens in their homes, whom he had serviced as garbage men. But he had abducted one 15-year-old girl in her own vehicle at gunpoint and driven her to a remote spot where he raped her. However, Brown refused to give blood and saliva samples for comparison with evidence in Pam's case, so police obtained a search warrant to obtain the samples. They admitted in the search warrant application that they were considering whether Brown could have been responsible for Pam's murder. 23-year-old Brown initially pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity to the 4 rape, 1 attempted rape, and multiple robbery and burglary charges he was facing. But he ended up pleading guilty to 5 rapes, 1 attempted rape, 3 burglaries, and 3 armed robberies. He was sentenced to 6 life sentences. I guess police could not link Brown to Pam because there was no more mention of him during this time period in the case file. Okay, let's skip ahead 20 years. In 1996, 26 years after Pam's murder, the Anne Arundel County Police Serology Lab undertook a review of its files to see what cold cases had physical evidence. Pam's certainly did. Remember that even back in 1970, investigators knew that the stain on Pam's coat was from semen. They had theorized that she'd been lying on it when she was sexually assaulted. They also found 2 cigarette butts in the car's ashtray that didn't come from anyone known to the Conyers family. Now, in March 1996, Dr. William Vosberg examined the semen stain on the coat belonging to Pam and was able to confirm sperm cells were still present in the stain. He conducted PCR DNA testing and obtained a single male STR DNA profile from the semen stain on the coat. A male STR DNA profile was also obtained from one of the cigarette butts. They were consistent. The same person whose DNA was on Pam's coat had smoked a cigarette in her car, stubbing it out in the ashtray. Back in 1970, he would have no way of knowing that he was leaving valuable evidence behind. This male DNA profile was entered into CODIS, and there were no hits. In addition, the fingerprints found on the car's exterior were submitted over the years to law enforcement databases like APHIS, and they never hit to anyone. It was around this time, in July 1996, that Ann Arundel County investigators sought a search warrant for blood and hair samples from Charles Robert Derrickson to compare to the new DNA profile available in Pam's case. Derrickson was the one who'd killed his associate McNeil, burning him up in a fake arson fire, and police believed them both to be involved in the rape and murder of Pam Conyers. Derrickson was imprisoned in Delaware. I assume a DNA sample was collected from him and it ruled him out, although it was possible that even at this early stage, his DNA had been entered into CODIS. That same month, Ann Arundel County Police Detective Harp contacted the medical examiner in Wilmington, Delaware, requesting all autopsy tissue samples from homicide victim Carl Wayne McNeil, saying it was believed that McNeil was killed by Charles Robert Derrickson to silence him in reference to the Conyers homicide. The Delaware medical examiner provided tissue block samples from McNeil, which were inconsistent with the DNA profile on the coat. Derrickson and McNeil had nothing to do with what happened to Pam. These prime suspects, which consumed hundreds of hours of police time, were a bust. From this time going forward, the suspect DNA sample was used to eliminate men in the Pam Conyers case file. For example, Pam's former boyfriend Tim was ruled out, so was her homecoming dance date, Kim R. In 2000, Pam's case was one of 20 unsolved homicides in Anne Arundel County being taken up by a cold case homicide squad. That statistic of unsolved murders did not include homicides in Baltimore, which had as many as 300 a year. As part of the cold case review, additional testing was conducted on evidentiary items such as Pam's coat. Additionally, in February 2000, it was discovered that the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner, Dr. Smellick, had 3 viable slides available from Pam's sexual assault kit. Examination by the Anne Arundel County Crime Lab identified spermatozoa on the slides. The slides were sent to Cellmark Labs for PCR testing, but unfortunately the lab determined that there was insufficient data to obtain a complete DNA profile from the sperm fraction. I believe this was because, as we would find out later, the sample included a mixture of the DNA of 2 men, as well as Pam's own DNA. Therefore, it was determined that the best sample available was the sperm fraction from Pam's coat cutting. The updated profile from the coat, which had a sufficient number of loci for entry into the offender DNA databases, was submitted to the Maryland State Police in July 2000. The Maryland State Police confirmed on the 28th of July that the profile had been entered into the Maryland State DNA database and had been submitted by the FBI into the National DNA Database CODIS on August 16, 2000. Again, to everyone's surprise, there were no hits. In April 2000, the latent prints were submitted to the FBI for analysis, and it was noted they had already been entered into APHIS. In 2000, that was about the extent of what could be done, other than direct DNA testing. And over the ensuing years, comparison DNA testing was conducted against men in the case file. Additional comparison tests were done of the hairs found on Pam's coat, which were submitted along with the hairs from several suspects to Cellmark or Chemicon for PCR testing. All were ruled out.
A Mochi moment from Sadie, who writes, "I'm not crying, you're crying. This is what I said during my first appointment with my physician at Mochi, because I didn't have to convince him I needed a GLP-1. He understood, and I felt supported, not judged. I came for the weight loss and stayed for the empathy. Thanks, Sadie." I'm Myra Ahmed, founder of Mochi Health. To find your Mochi moment, visit joinmochi.com.
Sadie is a Mochi member compensated for her story.
Running a business online? Look legit and own your own brand with professional tools from GoDaddy. Instantly build trust with your customers and boost your credibility with an email that matches your domain, so people know you mean business. There's never been a better time. Just go to GoDaddy.com/GD now and choose from a wide variety of popular domains to find one that's right for you. Pair that with a professional email that works for all your business needs, from daily communications to email marketing and everything in between. That's a little price for a lot of credibility. For a limited time, get a domain and matching professional email for just 99 cents a month for 1 year. Go to GoDaddy.com/GD now and look legit with GoDaddy. That's GoDaddy.com/GD now. Again, GoDaddy.com/GD now. There's never been a better time to choose the domain and email that's right for you. New customer purchases only. Products auto-renew separately. See terms on site. GoDaddy.com/GD now.
Ever wonder why you have insurance for your car or home, but not your digital life? Meet WebRoot Total Protection, your digital bodyguard that is built for real life. WebRoot takes the guessing game out of cybersecurity, so you can confidently browse, bank, and be yourself online without the worry of hackers lurking around the corner. With WebRoot Total Protection, you get antivirus that scans 6 times faster and takes up 33 times less space than the other guys. Identity protection with up to $1 million in fraud expense reimbursement and 24/7 US-based customer support. VPN protection that hides your IP address, personal data, and location from hackers. And cloud backup with unlimited storage that works automatically in the background. With plans for individuals and families, WebRoot makes it easy to live a better digital life. Go to webroot.com/promo and get 50% off today. That's webroot.com/promo to get 50% off today. Live a better digital life with WebRoot, because peace of mind shouldn't be optional.
Nothing notable happened on Pam's case until, in May 2017, the Netflix documentary The Keepers was released, opening up a whole can of worms. In short, The Keepers was a documentary series that probed the 1969 murder of nun Catherine Sesnick, a teacher at Baltimore's Archbishop Q High School. The documentary explores whether Sister Kathy had possibly been killed by a priest, some suspected of sexually abusing children. Other murders in the area in the same time frame that were considered similar to Sister Kathy's were mentioned in the documentary series, and one of these was the murder of Pam Conyers. That same year, facing public scrutiny because of the success of the documentary, Baltimore County Police spokeswoman Elise Armacost acknowledged that, quote, police are also investigating whether Sesnick's death is related to the deaths of 3 young women in the Baltimore area, Grace Montaigne, Joyce Malecki, and Pamela Conyers, who were last seen at shopping centers as Sesnick was, end quote, that from the Washington Post. A special cold case task force of the Baltimore County PD was taking the lead on that to see if Sister Kathy's case was in any way related to Pam's. I don't have any files on what they found, but I suspect it was nothing, because the following year, in October 2018, the Ann Arundel County PD submitted a SNP profile derived from the semen on Pam's coat to Parabon Nanolabs. The Parabon genealogist noted that the SNP in this case had a very low call rate of 65.9%. What this means is that significant portions of the SNPs were essentially missing. So the genealogist, Christine Green, knew that she would have to have an expansive view of the relatives she found. Because of the missing pieces, they could be in different generations in the family tree. She had uploaded the SNP profile to GEDmatch and found a top match of 106 centimorgans, with the next best match being 76 centimorgans. The top match was a woman. Using multiple lower-level matches, Ms. Green was able to locate 3 common ancestor couples, but all 3 were very far back in the suspect's tree, with 2 of the couples dating back to the 1700s. The family was clustered in what is now far western Virginia and eastern West Virginia. The genealogist's report gave the names of these 3 ancestral couples, with 9 trees built out to show their descendancies. The investigators were going to need to look at the 2nd and 3rd great-grandsons of these couples, all the males which occupied the general area of the tree where the suspect would be located based on his likely age in 1970. This was a massive task, as some of the families were quite large and had a multitude of descendants. Parabon's report provided common surnames present in the family trees and recommended reference testing of certain relatives of the matches to see if it helped further the analyses. The Ann Arundel investigators got to work building trees and eliminating branches, but it was a very slow process, and several factors delayed the IgG analysis in this case. For one, COVID hit the world in 2020, bringing everything to a standstill for some time. 2, on January 1st, 2021, Maryland passed the most stringent law in the country regulating the use of IgG by law enforcement. IgG could be used only in cases involving murder, rape, felony, sexual assault, or criminal acts presenting a substantial or ongoing threat to public or national security. Further, the law requires that labs utilized by law enforcement agencies in Maryland pursuing an IgG investigation must be accredited according to standards set by the Maryland Department of Health, and the investigation must be subject to judicial oversight. This means the IgG process needs to be approved and regularly monitored by a judge. The first record I have of a request for judicial review of the Ann Arundel County PD's actions appeared in a report by Detective Jason DePietro, which read, quote, "On Tuesday, October 5th, 2022, I applied for and obtained an FGGS court order authorizing law enforcement to further this criminal investigation into the rape and murder of Pam Conyers by utilizing FGG. The Honorable Pamela Albin, judge for the Circuit Court of Ann Arundel County, reviewed and signed the order." End quote. After that, there are holes in the documents provided to me, but I know that the Anne Arundel County investigators started reference testing suspected cousins of the suspect according to the family trees they were working on. The investigators began focusing on a set of grandparents, George Hypes and Ruth Harris. The couple had at least 7 known children, and those 7 children's male children were all potentially the suspect, assuming they could be placed in Maryland in 1970. One male descendant was eliminated when his DNA on a blood card excluded him, and Parabon was requested to conduct kinship testing to determine how this man was related to the suspect. The Anne Arundel investigators believed he was a brother to the suspect, but kinship testing showed that he shared about 900 centimorgans of DNA with the suspect. He also shared 51 centimorgans of X DNA with the suspect, meaning the two were related along the maternal line. These amounts of shared DNA would eliminate the suspect being a full or even a half sibling of the blood card donor. But the 900 number turned out to be deceptively low because of the low call rate of the suspect DNA sample. It turned out this blood card donor was actually a half sibling of the suspect. This temporarily derailed the analysis because he was listed in the family tree as a full sibling. They were going to have to do more testing, expanding outward from this immediate family. In October 2022, Judge Albin authorized the covert collection of a DNA sample from a D.L. Meadows, who resided outside the state of Maryland. I don't have the search warrant, but an argument must have been made that Meadows was a potential suspect in order to justify covert collection of his DNA. On Thursday, October 20th, members of the Anderson County Sheriff's Office, FBI Special Agent Sean Reagan, and Detective Jason DePietro started surveillance of Meadows. They started following Meadows around at 11:40 a.m. He drove to a Tractor Supply store and parked. Sergeant Josh Durham of the Anderson County Sheriff's Office watched Meadows get out of his car and hawk a big loogie onto the sidewalk right near a handicap sign. Special Agent Reagan walked over to the discarded saliva and monitored it until Meadows left the business. In other words, he kept eyes on the spit sample to make sure no one and nothing came in contact with it. At 11:51 a.m., Detective DePietro walked over to where Special Agent Reagan was standing and observed a fresh pile of spit on the sidewalk. Using 2 sterile swabs, he took samples of the spit right then and there and put them into envelopes. I have to say, in 150 or so episodes of DNA ID, this is the first case in which a surveilled suspect has actually been so obliging as to expectorate in public, enabling a fresh, juicy sample teeming with DNA to be collected by law enforcement. He might as well have spit into a DNA collection tube and handed it to them on a silver platter. Lab testing was remarkably quick. Detective DePietro had the results on Monday, October 24th. Meadows' DNA was not a match to the suspect DNA. He was excluded as a source of the semen stain on Pam's jacket and the DNA from the cigarette found in the car. But his samples showed that he shared a level of DNA with the suspect consistent with a maternal first cousin, which is what he turned out to be.
Running a business online? Look legit and own your own brand with professional tools from GoDaddy. Instantly build trust with your customers and boost your credibility with an email that matches your domain, so people know you mean business. There's never been a better time. Just go to GoDaddy.com/GD now and choose from a wide variety of popular domains to find one that's right for you. Pair that with a professional email that works for all your business needs, from daily communications to email marketing and everything in between. That's a little price for a lot of credibility. For a limited time, get a domain and matching professional email for just 99 cents a month for 1 year. Go to GoDaddy.com/GD now and look legit with GoDaddy. That's GoDaddy.com/GD now. Again, GoDaddy.com/GD now. There's never been a better time to choose the domain and email that's right for you. New customer purchases only. Products auto-renew separately. See terms on site. GoDaddy.com/GD now.
It is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to ChumbaCasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino-style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Ever wonder why you have insurance for your car or home, but not your digital life? Meet WebRoot Total Protection, your digital bodyguard that is built for real life. WebRoot takes the guessing game out of cybersecurity, so you can confidently browse, bank, and be yourself online without the worry of hackers lurking around the corner. With WebRoot Total Protection, you get antivirus that scans 6 times faster and takes up 33 times less space than the other guys. Identity protection with up to $1 million in fraud expense reimbursement and 24/7 US-based customer support. VPN protection that hides your IP address, personal data, and location from hackers. And cloud backup with unlimited storage that works automatically in the background. With plans for individuals and families, WebRoot makes it easy to live a better digital life. Go to webroot.com/promo and get 50% off today. That's webroot.com/promo to get 50% off today. Live a better digital life with WebRoot, because peace of mind shouldn't be optional.
On October 31st, Detective DiPietro again went before Judge Albin, requesting permission to continue using FGG to further the investigation. After he briefed her on Meadows being excluded and the fingerprint identification that had just been made, she granted permission for the continued use of FGG for another 30 days. Don't worry, I'll get back to the fingerprint. Confirming Meadows as a likely first cousin and taking into account a suspected non-paternity event and the low call rate concerning the blood card donor allowed the investigation to narrow their focus on a very specific family, the descendants of George Hypes and Ruth Harris. They now had an idea who their suspect might be, their grandson, Forrest Clyde Williams, who had been dead for several years. He and D.L. Meadows were first cousins, just as the DNA from Meadows had indicated, and he and the blood card donor were half-brothers through their mother, and he had connections to Glen Burnie, Maryland in 1970. Detectives needed to obtain some reference samples in order to confirm their suspicions that Forrest Williams was one of the suspects who had raped and killed Pam Conyers. On November 3, 2022, Detective DiPietro and FBI Special Agent Sean Reagan tracked down Williams' suspected biological daughter, Melissa, at work. They asked to speak with her outside. She agreed and they stepped out. Detective DiPietro told her they were investigating a 1970 murder and asked her if she had heard of Pam Conyers. No, she hadn't. The detective informed her that suspect DNA left at the scene had been analyzed, and through IgG they had narrowed the suspect to her family lineage. And due to recent advancements in technology, fingerprints collected at the scene had been identified as belonging to her father, Forrest Williams. Melissa confirmed for them that Williams was her father. But here's a quote from DiPietro's report. Quote, Melissa reported that she did not know her father. Melissa stated, "He was never in our lives." Melissa said that her father was in and out of her life until she was 7, but then he left the area, returning when Melissa was approximately 25. At that time, her father moved into Melissa's Aunt Faye's house, but the family could not forgive him for abandoning his children years earlier, and there was a massive family argument, whereafter her father moved back to Virginia. Melissa had not heard from her father since that argument. Melissa described her father to the detectives as an alcoholic, a drug dependent, and an abusive husband. She said that her father had been abusive toward her brother and had once pointed a gun at their mother's head. She confirmed that Williams smoked, and although she believed his brand of choice was Marlboros, she wasn't 100% sure. And then this crucial nugget, quote, "We asked Melissa if she remembered what type of work her father did. She thought it was something in construction near Mountain Road. She also remembered her mother always picking up her father from work, which suggests that he did not drive or have access to a vehicle, end quote. The Mountain Road construction project, where Pam and her car were both found. Special Agent Reagan explained the IGG process to Melissa, and she confirmed the family tree's accuracy. Just as an aside, that must be a very odd feeling to have the FBI show up with your family tree all mapped out on a piece of paper. Luckily, in general, people seemed amenable to being approached. Anyway, Melissa confirmed her aunts Peggy and May were still alive and might have information on her father. Melissa agreed to allow the investigators to collect DNA samples from her. On November 30th, Detective DiPietro again requested an extension for the IGG investigation from Judge Albin, saying they were still awaiting the results of testing on suspect number 1, Forrest Williams. She approved the additional 30 days. On December 9th, they met with Kathleen R., the mother of Melissa and her siblings Ronnie and Kevin. I don't have any information on whether Kathleen was interviewed about her ex, but I do know that the detectives requested that Kathleen give a DNA sample so they could use the DNA for reverse paternity testing of Melissa to try to gather DNA of her ex-husband, Forrest Clyde Williams. Kathleen, too, consented. On December 9th, Detective DiPietro met with a woman named Pearl. She was a sister of Forrest Williams. She consented to collection of a voluntary reference sample for consumer genomics DNA. On December 30th, 2022, Detective DiPietro again requested and received permission from Judge Albin to continue the IGG investigation, and that was the last extension they needed. On March 10, 2023, the Ann Arundel County Police Department announced at a press conference the identification of a suspect in the 1970 homicide of 16-year-old Pamela Lynn Conyers. Lieutenant Jackie Davis, spokeswoman for the AAPD, Special Agent Tom Sobocinski of the FBI, and Ann Arundel Police Chief Amal Aoud all addressed the assembled media. They announced that Forrest Clyde Williams III was the suspect, but he had died in 2018. If he were alive, he would have been charged with the murder of Pamela Lynn Conyers. Police Chief Aoud said, quote, "To the family of Pamela, we hope that today's announcement brings at least some degree of comfort and peace in finally learning who was responsible for her murder. Pamela was never forgotten, nor will she ever be forgotten." The chief made it clear that Pam's case was in no way connected to that of Sister Kathy Sesnick, and requested of the public that if anyone knew Forrest Williams back in the day, they please contact the homicide squad. Special Agent Sobocinski talked about the evolution of forensic and IGG technology, which he called FGG. He reiterated that for law enforcement, victims are never forgotten. He said, quote, "FGG provides hope for cases where there may have been none." Hear, hear. The Maryland authorities stated that Pam's surviving family members were happy to have some answers, but had requested privacy. So who was this Forrest Williams? Forrest Clyde Williams III, who went by Clyde, was born on December 12, 1948 in Covington City, Virginia. As you might have guessed, his father was Forrest Clyde Williams II, a World War II Navy veteran. His mother was Doris Nadine Hypes, whose sister, M.A. Meadows, was the mother of Clyde's first cousin, D. Meadows, whose DNA the IGG investigators had grabbed. Williams grew up in Botetourt County, where his parents owned and operated the Glen Wilton grocery store. It was quite a large family, with the Williamses having 6 sons and 4 daughters. The very large extended family was rooted in Virginia, but several family members also lived in Maryland. And that's where Clyde Williams moved in his late teen years. He attended high school in Ann Arundel County, Pasadena High School Northeast. After that, he worked as a carpenter. Young Clyde married Kathleen R. in his early 20s. I'm not sure exactly when, but I believe he was already married when he killed Pam. He and his wife Kathleen had 3 children. Their son Ronnie, born in 1974, died in 1995. Williams and Kathleen divorced, and Williams traveled back and forth between Maryland and Virginia. He remained in Allegheny, Virginia, tying the knot with a woman named Patricia on November 15, 1984. They divorced in the 1990s. One tidbit about Clyde Williams: he was very involved in the Carpenters Union Local 101. Newspaper articles from back in the 1960s reflect that he served as recording secretary for the union as early as 1965 when he was just 17. In this role, he did clerical stuff like post condolence blurbs in the local paper, noting passings of members or former members, kept minutes at meetings, and so on. According to an article in the Baltimore Sun, Williams was elected vice president of the local chapter on June 21, 1969. He would have been about 21 years old. Williams moved to Virginia permanently and on March 28, 2018, died there in an assisted living facility at age 69 of natural causes. He was cremated and buried in Locust Bottom Cemetery in Botetourt County. His obituary says he was a hunter, fisherman, NASCAR devotee, especially number 48 Jimmy Johnson, and a Dallas Cowboys fan. Maryland investigators do not believe that Forrest Clyde Williams and Pam Conyers knew each other at all. Williams was a 21-year-old working man. Pam was a sheltered 16-year-old high school student. Their meeting is believed to have occurred by chance. Remember that there was a white male seen with Pam in the mall parking lot that night. Whether this was Forrest was anyone's guess, but they were not guessing as to whether he had been with Pam on the night she died. Not only was his DNA found on the cigarette butt in her car and on the coat stained with semen, Williams's prints were found on the outside of Pam's vehicle. The prints were finally identified in 2022 thanks to enhancements in the latent print database. Absolutely shockingly to me, Forrest Williams had a negligible criminal record. If you think about what he did, abduct, brutally rape, and viciously murder and dump a teenage girl unknown to him, you would think he was a career criminal with a record as long as your arm. Not so at all. He'd been arrested in Ann Arundel County and in Florida in the early 70s for drunk and disorderly kind of offenses. He had a citation by the Maryland Natural Resources Police for fishing without a license in May 1990, when he was apparently living on, get this, Williams Street in Savage, Maryland. And he had an assault down in Virginia a few years before his death and one gun charge. But that was it. Nothing that police could find in his life, other than reports by his daughter that he had been abusive, pointed to him being capable of the kind of violence that was inflicted on Pam. But this was not over. On March 6, 2023, Detective DePietro submitted another application for the court to perform another IGG investigation. Yes, a whole new investigation. They were seeking to identify a second suspect. I deliberately buried the lead here, but at the press conference announcing Forrest Williams' involvement in Pam's death, Ann Arundel County Police Lieutenant Jackie Davis told reporters, quote, "It is very important for me to say that detectives and investigators have not ruled out the possibility that another person or persons may be involved in Pam's murder. Because of that, we have to protect the integrity of the investigation and any potential future prosecutions," end quote. Even though Forrest Williams' DNA had been found on Pam's coat and on one of the cigarettes collected from her car ashtray, and he'd been named as a suspect in Pam's rape and murder, and his fingerprints had been found on her car, the case remained open. There was a second suspect. It turned out a second cigarette butt found in the ashtray of Pam's car had inconsistent DNA on it from the one that was consistent with the semen on the coat. In other words, the DNA from a different male was on a second piece of evidence believed to be connected to the crime. Remember that there were other circumstances that had led police to suspect that more than one man had been involved in Pam's case. One, the copious amount of seminal fluid found in Pam that pointed possibly to two offenders. Second, a set of tire tracks was found near Pam's car that did not come from Pam's car. In other words, a second vehicle had been involved and was at the crime scene, appearing to have picked up the person who rode with Pam in her car, possibly even driving it. The two different male DNA cigarette butts meant that two men were in the Conyers car, two men who had no business being there. Remember, Mr. Conyers did not smoke, and Pam did not have boys in her father's car as a rule. Those cigarette butts were laden with male DNA came from men who were in the car on the night Pam was killed. Judge Albin approved Detective DePietro's new application. This time, the Ann Arundel County Police Department, working with the FBI, selected Othram to do the lab work. In March 2023, the Maryland investigators submitted the second cigarette butt to Othram. On April 4th, Detective DePietro went before Judge Albin and advised that the lab had not completed its SNP profile of suspect number 2. She authorized an additional 30 days. This same process was repeated for the next couple of months. Finally, on July 7th, the SNP was ready. The profile was then delivered to the Anne Arundel County investigators, who worked with the FBI's forensic genetic genealogy team to try to identify the man who had smoked in Pam's car along with Forrest Williams. On July 27th, Detective DePietro asked Judge Albin for yet another extension, awaiting the FBI lab results, and his request was granted. Again, this process was repeated for several months while the FBI's genealogy team worked to build the family trees of the second man who had left a cigarette butt in Pam's car. It took a while, but they got him. Ann Arundel County Police Chief Amal Aoud held a second press conference in March 2024 announcing, quote, "Our investigation has revealed the identity of a second individual responsible for the homicide and sexual assault of Pamela Conyers. Donald Willard of Montgomery County, Maryland, has been identified as the second suspect. If Willard were still alive today, he too would be charged for his role in the death of Pam Conyers. While we do hope it provides a sense of closure for all who knew and loved her, we know that they still search for answers to what happened to Pam on that Friday, October 16th, 1970, end quote. Chief Aoud specified that her agency's investigation had not concluded. We are asking anyone who knew Willard to come forward, she said. Anne Arundel County PD spokesman Justin Mulcahy showed photos of both suspects, Forrest Williams and Donald Willard, and said, "We're trying to gather information about their possible involvement in any other crimes." They believed the men had worked together to rape and murder Pam. The investigators didn't believe that either man knew Pam before the night on which they killed her, but they didn't know what the connection was between the two suspects either. As they admitted at the press conference, quote, "We have missing pieces. We don't know whether they knew each other prior to the crime," end quote. The only link they'd been able to find between the two men was that they both lived in the area, Pasadena, and worked in the trades. They were approximately the same age. They both liked to hunt, and they both hung out at an establishment called the Mountain Bar on Mountain Road in Pasadena. Neither man's family had heard of the other man, so it was unknown whether they were friends or acquaintances or colleagues or what. Quote, "We don't have any indication that they knew Pam prior to her death. We're not sure that they knew each other. There seems to be a common link at this bar they may have frequented. So I think that's a key point," Mulcahy said. "Share your experiences with us. Maybe you hunted or fished with them. Maybe you worked or drank a beer with them. If you did, call us." Joe Rothrock, the special agent in charge of the FBI Baltimore field office, sang the praises of the new investigative technique available to cold case investigators, saying, quote, "Only through IgG were we able to identify Pam's killers," end quote. We do not know a lot about Donald Irving Willard, hence the police plea for information. Willard was born in Maryland on October 27, 1949, to parents Raymond Willard Sr. and Claire Marie Hemmel. He had one brother, Raymond Jr., who died in 2009, and a second brother I'm not naming. In 1950, Willard's family was living in Pasadena. He never married and had no children that I could find. Since the FBI did the genealogy work, I have no idea how Willard's DNA was confirmed. His deceased brother, Raymond, did have 2 children, although one of those children predeceased the IgG investigation as well. Donald Willard did have a niece who spoke well of him and was somewhat close to him. Perhaps her DNA was the confirmatory sample. Police revealed that Donald Willard was a Pasadena handyman who worked for Haverhill Contracting out of White Marsh, Maryland. That company was hired to work the Route 100 construction site where Pam's body was found. I mentioned earlier in the episode that the names of workers on the construction project were collected, but I'm not certain that extended to every single contractor or ones that worked part-time or, as some did, every third weekend. If the FBI knows more detail about Willard's ties to the site and whether he was interviewed by the original investigators, they aren't saying. Willard was a hunter and fisherman who moved to Montgomery County, Maryland in his later years, living in both Rockville and Kensington. He had a more significant criminal record than did his accomplice, Forrest Williams. He was arrested in Baltimore in 1966 for auto theft and was charged with robbery in the same city in 1970. I have no details. According to web sleuth user Aegon the Conqueror, who says Forrest Williams was his distant cousin, Willard's cause of death was hyperthermia. He had no air conditioning, had a medical event, and died of overheating. His death was ruled an accident. His niece was his next of kin and saw to it that he was cremated. And speaking of his being cremated, this is crazy. In 2017, when Willard had been reduced to ashes in a box for 7 years, someone left the box of ashes on the stoop of the Veers Mill Baptist Church in Silver Spring, Maryland. The box of ashes had Willard's name on it and the tag from the crematorium, but that place had closed, and the church pastor Robert Wilson could not figure out what to do with the ashes. The local CBS station WUSA 9 TV did a story on the unclaimed ashes, and Willard's niece heard about it. She came to claim the ashes and told the reporter that her uncle Donald Willard was a steam fitter, a Vietnam veteran, and a special guy. He lived with his brother in Rockville, and the two died 6 months apart in 2009 and 2010. The niece said she handled the cremation, but another family member took the cremains in. It's unclear who left him at the Veers Mill Baptist Church. Keep in mind, this was years before Willard was identified as a murder suspect. If one of his family members got bad juju from Willard's cremains, it was for another reason that had nothing to do with Pam's murder. Or perhaps they wanted a proper burial for the cremains but couldn't afford the expenses associated with that. They possibly hoped that the church would take care of it in an act of charity. Okay, so that's it for the Pam Conyers case, a particularly dissatisfying ending given how little we know about what happened to her. We can only speculate given the scant facts we have, so here goes. Glen Burnie, where the mall was, and Pasadena, where Williams lived, are close, with their downtown areas being about 6 miles apart. As we know from his interview with his daughter, Forrest was typically driven around by his wife. It doesn't sound like he had a car. So how did he come to be in Pam's car? Well, we can only assume that he was at the mall that night, perhaps already in the company of his buddy Willard. I imagine the two were drinking after a long week of construction work or building and for some reason ended up at the mall. Maybe they were there doing an errand, or maybe they were there stalking female prey. Either they saw Pam walking out of the mall alone, or they were in the parking lot when she approached her car, walking alone in the dark lot. It's possible, as police believed at the time, that Forrest hid in the back seat and waited for Pam to climb into her car before pouncing and kidnapping her. Or Forrest waylaid Pam as she approached her car and forced her inside her vehicle and drove her to a secondary location, Willard following behind in his car. They took her to an unknown destination where they raped her, allowed her to redress, and then strangled her and put her in the trunk of her car. What they did next is the confusing part. If the hunting witnesses are correct, then the car was moved on Saturday morning. I can't figure out why they would do that, though. Why not just ditch the car and the body on Saturday night rather than hanging on to the incriminating evidence until daytime the next day? If I had to guess, I would say that it's likely that these two were not rocket scientists, and they at first left the car and Pam somewhere very obvious where it would quickly be found. They realized later they needed to cover their traces a little better, so they went back and moved it. That's the most logical explanation I can come up with. But why they would put the car and Pam's body at a construction site to which both men were professionally connected is beyond me. As I said, I don't think these guys have Einstein in their family trees. They were savvy enough to wipe down the car's interior, but not smart enough to realize Forrest had left a big juicy handprint on the outside of the car. I will give them kudos for one thing, their ability to keep a secret. This is one of the very few cases I've come across with dual perpetrators. We don't know whether Willard and Williams stayed in touch or went their separate ways, but it doesn't appear that either man spoke about what they had done to anyone. And I'd like to point out that the evidence of Willard's involvement is a lot weaker than Williams's. Williams's semen was detected on Pam's coat and his prints on the car. With Willard, all we have is his DNA on a cigarette butt. This gives me pause for a moment, wondering whether we are maligning someone potentially innocent or just an accomplice who helped get rid of the body. But then I remembered that the original autopsy report determined that there were, quote, copious amounts of semen found in Pam's vaginal cavity. So much so that the pathologist theorized that more than one man had been her rapist. We don't have test results connecting Willard to that seminal fluid, but given that his DNA was in Pam's car, I think we can draw conclusions for ourselves. After 54 years, Pam Conyers' case is resolved thanks to IGG. And if you are one of the bad guys, they are coming for you. Thanks for listening to this episode of DNA ID. Before you leave, please let me tell you about some important things related to the show. If you'd like to support this podcast, and in the process, get access to early and ad-free episodes, as well as bonus content like crime scene photos, you can sign up for a Patreon subscription for only $5 a month by heading over to patreon.com/DNAID. Of course, you're welcome to contribute more than $5 a month. We rely on Patreon funds to pay for the original source materials I use to research each episode. If Patreon isn't your thing, you can also show your support with an AbJack Insider subscription through Apple Podcasts. It costs just $4.99 a month or $49.99 a year. Your AbJack Insider subscription will give you the same benefits for not only DNA ID, but for all of the shows on the AbJack network, like Killer Communications and Campus Killings. Head over to Apple Podcasts and find the DNA ID page or look for the AbJack network to get started. If you're on social media, we'd love to interact with you there. DNA ID is on every major social media platform. Search your favorite platforms for DNA ID Podcast to find us. We also have a YouTube channel, and our website is dnaidpodcast.com. You can find links to all of these anytime in our show notes. If you need to reach the show, contact us by emailing dnaidpodcast@gmail.com. Finally, if you want to pick up some fun DNA ID merch and represent the show, visit the store at www.customizedgirl.com/s/DNA ID podcast. DNA ID is researched, written, and hosted by me, Jessica Betancourt. It's produced by me and Mike Morford of AbJack Entertainment. Music by Connor Betancourt.